Raymond Collier was not a man anyone would have described as remarkable. He had lived on Grover Street for 34 years. He had worked for 28 of those years as a maintenance supervisor at Akron Children's Hospital, the kind of job that kept everything running without anyone particularly noticing until something broke. He fixed what needed fixing. He showed up when he was supposed to. He did not complain. He and Margaret had tried for children early in their marriage and it had not happened, and after a while they had stopped trying and built a life that was full in other ways. Margaret had taught piano lessons in their living room for 25 years. Raymond had coached Little League for a decade, badly but enthusiastically, and had built a reputation among the neighborhood kids as the man with the best garden and the most patient explanations of how things worked. How engines worked. How plumbing worked. How to change a tire. How to tell if a tomato was ready to pick. He had nephews and nieces he adored. He had a brother, Carl, in Columbus, who called every other Sunday. He had neighbors he had known for decades, the Washingtons next door, elderly Mrs. Petrov across the street who brought him soup after Margaret died and had not entirely stopped. He had a church he attended most Sundays, a library card he used constantly, and a vegetable garden that was his most reliable source of peace. When Margaret died in December of the previous year quickly, from a stroke, without warning, on a Tuesday afternoon while Raymond was at work, he had felt the loss as a physical restructuring of his world. Not just grief. Reorganization. Everything familiar was still there but arranged differently, at angles he kept bumping into. He had taken the retirement he had been planning and moved through the first months of it carefully, the way you move through a house after the furniture has been rearranged. He cooked. He gardened. He read. He slept badly and woke at midnight and sat in the kitchen with cold coffee. He was, in the most precise sense of the phrase, a man alone. And then, on a Tuesday night in November, someone left a baby on his porch. The baby was a girl. Raymond figured this out after a few minutes of careful and apologetic investigation while the baby lay on the kitchen table on the Green Star blanket, looking up at the ceiling light with intense concentration. She was small but not newborn small. Raymond thought maybe 3 or 4 months old, though he acknowledged freely to himself that he was not an expert. She was wearing a yellow onesie with a duck on the front and she had a full head of dark hair and the kind of cheeks that seemed designed specifically to be touched. Raymond stood across the kitchen looking at her with his hands on his hips. "Right," he said. "Okay." He called 911. While he waited, he warmed some water and found, in the back of a cabinet, an old box of powdered formula that had been there since Margaret's sister had visited with her newborn 2 years ago. He was not certain it was still good. He was certain it was better than nothing. He made a bottle with the careful attention of a man attempting something precise with unfamiliar tools. The baby drank it with focused determination. "You were hungry," Raymond said. The baby kept drinking. "That's a yes," Raymond said. Officer Diane Torres arrived at 2:55 in the morning. She was a 12-year veteran with the Akron PD and she had seen a great many things in 12 years, but a 63-year-old widower holding a baby in a kitchen at 3 in the morning while attempting to burp, it was a new configuration. She stood in the doorway and assessed the scene. "Mr. Collier?" "That's me," Raymond said. He had the baby over his shoulder and was patting her back with the careful rhythm of someone who had watched YouTube tutorials on the subject in the past 40 minutes. "You called about an abandoned infant. I found her on my porch at 2:17. I checked the street. No one there. Brought her in, fed her, called you." Diane Torres came inside. She looked at the baby, who had just produced a burp of impressive volume and was now looking enormously satisfied with herself. "She seems okay," Diane said. "She seems fine," Raymond agreed. "She's been fed. She's warm. Whoever left her, they wrapped her up warm. There was a blanket." Diane looked at the Green Star blanket folded on the table. "Anything else? Note? Bag? Anything?" Raymond reached into the pocket of his robe. He produced a folded piece of paper. "This was tucked inside the blanket. I didn't want to handle it too much in case I don't know." Fingerprints. Diane pulled on a glove and took the note. She unfolded it. It was handwritten. The handwriting was careful and small, the handwriting of someone who had taken time with it. It said, "Her name is Iris. She is 4 months old. She is healthy. She has had all her vaccinations. Please take care of her. I cannot keep her safe where I am. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Her mother." Diane read it twice. Then she looked up at Raymond. Then she looked at the baby, who had grabbed Raymond's collar with one small fist and was holding on with complete conviction. "I'll need to take her," Diane said. Raymond looked at Diane. He looked at the baby. He looked at the baby's fist wrapped around his collar. "Tonight," he said. "Protocol, Mr. Collier. She'll go into emergency foster care while we investigate." Raymond nodded slowly. He understood protocol. He had spent 28 years at a hospital. He understood that systems existed for reasons. He just stood there for another moment with the baby's fist on his collar. "Her name is Iris," he said. To himself, mostly. "That's what the note says," Diane confirmed. He nodded again. Carefully, gently, he unhooked the small fingers from his collar. He handed Iris to Officer Torres. Iris looked at him over Diane's shoulder with those dark, serious eyes. Raymond raised one hand in a small wave. Iris blinked. He stood on his porch in the cold and watched the patrol car drive away. Then he went inside and stood in the kitchen looking at the Green Star blanket on the table and the empty bottle on the counter and the note that Diane had taken with her. "Her name is Iris." Raymond sat down at the kitchen table. He put both hands flat on the surface. He sat there for a long time in the kitchen light, in the particular quiet of a house that had just been briefly, unexpectedly, and completely alive. The next morning Raymond called the Akron PD non-emergency line. He told himself he was just following up, making sure the baby was okay. Any reasonable person would do the same. He had found her on his porch. He had a right to know she was safe. The officer who answered told him Iris had been placed with an emergency foster family and was doing well. He thanked her. He hung up. He went to his garden. He turned over the November bed that didn't need turning. He came back inside. He made lunch he didn't eat. He called Carl in Columbus. "I found a baby on my porch last night," he said. A long pause. "Ray," Carl said. "What?" Raymond told him the whole story. Carl listened without interrupting, which was unusual for Carl. "And she's okay?" Carl said when Raymond finished. "She's with a foster family. She's fine." "But?" Raymond looked out the kitchen window at the empty garden. "Nothing. No but." "Raymond." "What?" "You've been talking for 10 minutes about a baby you met for 2 hours and you didn't say it was once. You said this. Iris is fine. Iris is with a foster family. Present tense." Raymond said nothing. "You want to know who left her," Carl said. "I want to know she's safe," Raymond said. "That's all." "Her," Carl said, in the voice of a younger brother who has known Raymond for 63 years. Raymond changed the subject. But that night, at midnight, sitting in the kitchen with his cold coffee, he reread the note from memory. "I cannot keep her safe where I am." 2 weeks passed. Raymond called the non-emergency line 3 more times. Each time he was told Iris was doing well in foster care. Each time he thanked the officer and hung up and went back to his kitchen. On a Thursday evening, he did something he had not planned to do. He drove to the Department of Children and Family Services office on South Main Street. He sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes deciding whether he was being ridiculous. Then he went inside. The caseworker he spoke to was a young woman named Angela Reyes who had the patient, carefully neutral expression of someone who had learned to reserve judgment as a professional discipline. Raymond explained who he was. He explained that he had found Iris. He explained that he was not sure exactly why he was there except that he could not stop thinking about the note. I cannot keep her safe where I am. Angela listened. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, carefully, Mr. Collier, are you interested in being considered as a foster placement? Raymond opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm 63 years old, he said. That's not a disqualifying factor. I live alone. Also not disqualifying. I don't have any experience with Mr. Collier. Angela folded her hands. Why are you here? Raymond was quiet for a moment. He looked at his hands in his lap. Large hands, worn from 30 years of maintenance work, from garden soil and pipe fittings and the small careful repairs that kept large things running. I don't know, he said honestly. I just keep thinking about her. I found her and I fed her and she held onto my collar and then she was gone and I keep thinking about that note. I cannot keep her safe. Whoever wrote that was not a bad person. They were a desperate person. And I keep thinking that somewhere out there is a mother who is not safe and a baby who needed someone to open a door at 2 in the morning. He stopped. Angela looked at him for a long moment. The training process takes about 6 weeks, she said. I can give you the paperwork today if you want to take it home and think about it. Raymond took the paperwork home. He sat at the kitchen table with it in front of him for 2 hours. He called Carl. Carl said, in the direct way of younger brothers, Ray, you've been sitting in that kitchen alone for 11 months. Fill out the forms. Raymond filled out the forms. 6 weeks later, Raymond Collier became a licensed foster parent in the state of Ohio. 2 days after his license was approved, Angela Reyes called him. The family Iris is moving out of state, she said. We need a new placement. Given your specific connection to her case, and given your completed licensing, I wanted to ask you first. Raymond was in the garden. He was holding a trowel he had stopped using. When, he said. Friday. This Friday. This Friday. Raymond looked at the garden. He looked at the house. He thought about Margaret's piano still in the living room, untouched since she died, and the guest room he had not opened in months, and the kitchen where he sat at midnight with cold coffee going nowhere. I'll need to get a crib, he said. Yes, Angela said. You will. Raymond spent Thursday at Target and Buy Buy Baby, which were stores he had never entered before in his life and which were, he discovered, significantly more complicated than they appeared from the outside. He called Carl twice from the baby monitor aisle. He called his neighbor Mrs. Washington once from the car seat section. Mrs. Washington came and met him there and walked him through it with the calm authority of a grandmother of 7, and they came home with a car seat, a crib, a baby monitor, 4 sets of harnesses in various sizes, 3 receiving blankets, a mobile with small cloth animals that played a soft song when you wound it up, and a green fleece blanket with white stars on it because Raymond had gone looking for one specifically. He set up the crib in the guest room. He installed the mobile. He wound it up and listened to it play its small song in the quiet room. He stood there for a moment. Then he went downstairs and made a proper dinner for the first time in 11 months and ate all of it. Iris came on Friday afternoon. Angela carried her in and set her down in Raymond's living room in her car seat. Iris looked around the room with her characteristic seriousness. Her eyes moved across the walls, the furniture, the piano. They landed on Raymond. She looked at him. He looked at her. He had the distinct impression, which he would later describe to Carl as probably just in my head but also maybe not, that Iris recognized him. Hey there, Raymond said. Remember me? Iris reached up both arms. Raymond picked her up. Raymond Collier learned, in the months that followed, that babies are simultaneously more work and more interesting than he had anticipated. Iris was curious in the particular way of babies who are constantly discovering that the world is larger than they thought. She wanted to touch everything. She had opinions about her food, strong, immediate, non-negotiable opinions. She slept in 4-hour blocks and then woke up not crying but talking, a long, serious monologue of sounds that Raymond came to think of as her morning briefing, as if she were reporting overnight developments. He talked to her constantly. He explained things, the way he always had with the neighborhood kids, carefully and without condescension. He told her how the furnace worked. He told her the names of the vegetables in the garden. He told her about Margaret, about the piano lessons, about how Margaret used to hum while she cooked and how the house still sometimes felt like it was waiting for that sound. Iris listened with her full attention, which was the most attention Raymond had ever had from anyone. Mrs. Washington came twice a week. She brought food and held Iris while Raymond did things that required 2 free hands, and she told him, every single time, that he was doing better than he thought he was. Raymond's brother Carl drove up from Columbus one weekend and sat in the kitchen watching Raymond give Iris a bath with the focused concentration of a man diffusing something delicate, and Carl had to leave the room twice to compose himself. Meanwhile, the investigation into Iris's origins continued quietly in the background. Diane Torres called Raymond occasionally with updates, or the absence of them. The note had yielded no usable prints. The Green Star blanket had been purchased at a chain store, thousands of units sold, no useful trail. Security footage from neighboring streets had captured a figure, female, dark coat, moving quickly, but the resolution was poor and the angle was wrong. I cannot keep her safe where I am. Raymond thought about that line every day. He thought about the handwriting, careful, small, someone who had taken time. Not panicked writing. Deliberate writing. The writing of someone who had made a decision and was carrying it out completely. He thought about a woman somewhere who had made the hardest decision of her life on a November night and walked to a strange house and left her daughter on the porch and walked away, and he thought, she chose this house. Not the next house. Not the house across the street. This house. Why? The answer came 14 months later on a Tuesday afternoon in January. Raymond was in the living room with Iris, who was now 18 months old and walking with the confident instability of someone who has recently discovered legs and intends to use them for everything. She was crossing the room toward the piano with the focused intent she brought to all her explorations, and Raymond was watching her from the couch, ready to intercept, when his phone rang. Diane Torres. Mr. Collier. I need you to come in. We found something. He brought Iris to Mrs. Washington and drove to the precinct. Diane Torres met him in a small conference room. She had a folder on the table. She had a look on her face that Raymond had learned, in his months of occasional contact with her, meant she was managing information carefully. We got a hit on a missing persons case, she said. A woman named Sarah Collier. Raymond went very still. Collier, he said. Yes. Diane looked at him steadily. She's 31 years old. She went missing from Pittsburgh about 2 years ago. She was living with a man named Derek Marsh who had a significant history of domestic violence. She'd had a baby 4 months before she disappeared. We matched Iris's DNA from the initial intake blood work. Raymond was not moving. Sarah Collier, he said again. Mr. Collier. Raymond, does that name mean anything to you? Raymond looked at the table. He looked at the folder. He looked at the wall. He was doing something interior and difficult that Diane could see happening on his face. My brother Carl, he said slowly, had a daughter who went very wrong with a very bad situation about 3 years ago. We lost touch. She moved to Pittsburgh with someone her father didn't trust. Carl tried to find her. We all tried. He stopped. We stopped trying about a year ago. We thought we didn't know what to think. Diane opened the folder. She turned it toward him. Raymond looked at the photograph. It was a driver's license photo. A young woman with dark hair and dark eyes and cheekbones that Raymond recognized because he had been looking at them every single day for 14 months. His niece. Sarah Collier was his niece. Which meant Iris was Raymond's hands pressed flat on the table. His brother Carl's granddaughter. His own great-niece. The baby he had found on his porch at 2:17 in the morning wrapped in a green star blanket had been left there, not randomly, not by accident, but by a woman who knew exactly which house she was walking to. I cannot keep her safe where I am. She had known he would open the door. Where is she? Raymond asked. His voice was steady. He was a man who got steady in the moments that required it. Where is Sarah? A shelter in Cleveland, Diane said. She got out 3 months after she left Iris with you. There was a police response to the house in Pittsburgh. She was taken to a hospital. She's been in a shelter since then, trying to rebuild, trying to figure out how to come forward about Iris without losing her entirely. She paused. She's been following the case. She knew Iris was with you. She's known for months. She was waiting, Raymond said. She was waiting until she was safe enough, Diane said. Until she had something to offer. Until she wasn't, until she could be the mother she wanted to be. Raymond sat back in his chair. He looked at the ceiling. He pressed his lips together. He breathed. Can I see her? He said. Sarah Collier was sitting in a chair in a small office at the shelter when Raymond walked in. She was thinner than her license photo. She had the careful stillness of someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible and was now, slowly and not without difficulty, learning to unlearn it. She looked at Raymond when he walked in and she did not look away. Raymond sat down across from her. He looked at her face, his brother Carl's face in a different arrangement, 31 years old and carrying things no 31-year-old should carry. You knew which house to go to, he said. Sarah nodded. Uncle Ray, she said. It was the first time she had said it. Her voice was careful. Dad used to talk about you. He used to say if anything ever went really wrong, if I ever needed, he used to say you were the one who fixed things. Raymond looked at his hands. I didn't know it was you, he said. For 14 months I didn't know. I know. She looked down. I'm sorry. I was so scared. I needed her to be safe and I needed time to get safe myself and I didn't know how to. She stopped. She was on your porch for 12 minutes before you opened the door. I stood across the street and watched. I needed to know someone picked her up. 12 minutes. Raymond thought about the kitchen. The cold coffee. The library book open to the same page. The sound at the edge of hearing that he had almost told himself was nothing. She held onto my collar, he said. First night. She grabbed my collar and wouldn't let go. Sarah pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes filled. That's her, she said through her hand. That's exactly her? Raymond leaned forward and put both of his large, worn hands over his niece's hands on the table. You're going to come home, he said. It was not a question. Both of you. You're going to come to Grover Street and you're going to take the time you need and you're going to get steady and then we're going to figure out the rest. Okay? Sarah looked at him. She'll remember you, she said. She lights up when she sees familiar people. She'll know you. I know she will, Raymond said. Come home, Sarah. They brought Iris to the shelter the following afternoon. Raymond carried her in. Sarah was standing in the small common room, wearing a blue sweater, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. Iris looked at the room. She looked at Raymond. She looked at the woman in the blue sweater. She went completely still. Babies know. That was what Raymond had told Alicia at Christmas, and he believed it completely. Babies carry something that the rest of us spend our lives trying to recover, a direct, unmediated knowing, the kind that lives in the body before the mind learns to second-guess it. Iris looked at her mother for 3 seconds. Then she reached out both arms. Sarah crossed the room. She took her daughter. She held her against her chest with both arms and her face went into Iris's dark hair and she made no sound at all, which was somehow the most complete expression of everything that needed to be expressed. Iris put both hands on her mother's face. Raymond stood by the door of that small room in a Cleveland shelter on a January afternoon and watched his great-niece put her hands on her mother's face, and he thought about a November night 14 months ago, about 2:17 in the morning, about the sound at the edge of hearing that he had almost decided was nothing. He was very glad he had gotten up. Sarah Collier moved into the guest room on Grover Street in March. The crib stayed where it was. The mobile still played its small song. The Green Star blanket was washed and folded at the foot of the crib, and Iris slept under it every night the way she always had, in the room that Raymond had built for her before he knew who she was. Carl drove up from Columbus the weekend after Sarah arrived. He sat in Raymond's kitchen and held his granddaughter for 2 hours and did not trust himself to speak for most of it. When he finally did, he said to Raymond, "You fixed it." Raymond shook his head. "Sarah fixed it," he said. "She made the hard choice and she survived long enough to come back for it. I just opened a door at 2:17 in the morning." "Well," Raymond said, "I wasn't sleeping anyway." Sarah got a job. She found a therapist. She found a legal aid organization that helped her through the process of formally reclaiming custody, which Angela Reyes quietly and professionally expedited. She enrolled in a community college class on Tuesday nights. She came home on Tuesday nights to find Raymond in the kitchen with Iris, both of them involved in some project, baking something, fixing something, examining something from the garden, and she would stand in the kitchen doorway for a moment before they noticed her, just watching, the way you stand in a warm room after a long time in the cold. On the first anniversary of the night Raymond found Iris on his porch, he sat at the kitchen table at midnight with his coffee hot this time, the way he made it now, since there was always a reason to be awake, and he looked at the kitchen as it was, Iris's drawings on the refrigerator, Sarah's coat on the hook by the door, the piano Margaret had played finally played again because Sarah had started learning, slowly, one song at a time. The house was full. Not in the way he had planned. Not in the way he and Margaret had imagined, long ago, before they stopped imagining that particular thing. But full in the way that matters most, full of people who needed somewhere to land and found it, full of the ordinary extraordinary noise of lives being rebuilt inside walls that had been waiting, patiently and without knowing it, for exactly this. Raymond looked at the window. The November dark outside. A year ago tonight, a sound at the edge of hearing. A choice to get up and open the door. He drank his coffee. Some things, he thought, find their way to exactly where they are supposed to be. Not because it is easy. Not because the road is straight or the night is warm or the time is convenient. But because somewhere along the way, someone chose to pay attention. Someone chose to get up. Someone chose to open the door. And inside, a light was on. If this story surprised you, moved you, or made you think about the doors you've opened or the ones you wish you had, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Tale Vera for more extraordinary true-to-life stories about the unexpected ways people find each other. Leave a comment below and tell us, do you believe some things happen for a reason? We want to know what you think.